Hi, this is Jarvis Kettlehake, and this is my digital story. Infancy began for me when I was born November 27, 1974, weighing in at 6 pounds 8 ounces. According to our book, Exploring Lifespan Development by Laura Burke, I met every milestone at or before the deadlines. I started making noises around 2.5 months, sitting up at 4 months, started crawling at 7 months, and said dada at 8 months. I never had the stranger danger phase as many children do around the 9-month mark. I began walking at 10 months with the bribery of food. I learned most of my skills through classical conditioning and imitation. Some socio-emotional milestones that I reached were thumb sucking to soothe myself, as well as smiling and laughing. I was about 18 months old when I began putting sentences together. I was an outgoing child who, according to my mother, never wanted to sit still. I was more attached to my mother as she stayed home with me most days. Close to the 18-month mark, I began wanting to explore everything, which led to me crawling over gates, falling down stairs, and I was much more aware of my surroundings and the people around me at that age. As I began early childhood, I began to be normal in growth and cognitive abilities and continue to hit the milestones as laid out in our textbook by Burke. I did, however, miss out on socio-emotional milestones by not going to preschool or making many friends due to my family living on a farm. During early childhood, I loved to play with my action figures that I would give humanistic qualities to, making play with them more realistic to me. When I didn't have anyone to play with, I would play make-believe to amuse myself. I was able to get dressed by the age of 2, and I loved to color all over everything, including my parents' walls, which they didn't like. I loved being read to by my mother, and I would pick up books just to look at the pictures. Because of this, I was engaged cognitively and began to use much larger words and could start to see the difference between real and fake. I could describe myself with emotional characteristics such as sad, happy, or excited, and physical characteristics such as tall, big, or short. I would classify my parents' parenting style as authoritative in that I was taught right from wrong and there would be punishment for not following the rules. I didn't start school until 6 due to my birthday. This was in some ways, I'm sure, affected my social growth as I only had my sister to play with and interact with. In school, I was constantly in trouble for talking or not paying attention in class, even though I was able to maintain good grades. By middle childhood, at the age of 7, I had developed many friends that I would play with both at school as well as at home. This helped me to grow socially. At age 7, I also began playing baseball, which was my favorite sport at this age. I learned through modeling or imitation how to throw a ball, swing a bat, and other general rules of baseball. By doing these things, I began to notice improvements in my gross motor skills. At age 8, I lost my first tooth, and I also learned to ride a bike. In school, my grades stayed excellent, even though my talking in class never improved. My favorite subject was spelling, and from first grade to fifth grade, I never missed a spelling word, showing my long-term knowledge was growing at a normal rate. At this period of time, I loved to read and would read an average of 5 to 10 books a week. I had a desire to be the smartest person in my class, and in fifth grade won an award for a speech that I wrote entirely by myself on the Vietnam War Memorial. I had to give my speech to the entire elementary school, which made me nervous, but also accomplished at the same time. By adolescence, I decided to quit playing baseball because I was the smallest person on the team, and due to my short height, I was also teased by teammates, which made playing a whole lot less fun. I taught myself to play chess at the age of 16 by reading an encyclopedia, and also at age 16 I began to play tennis for my high school, where I had lettered. I was a late bloomer and did not get my growth spurt until the age of 17, which was also when I started puberty. According to Burke, that is the highest age you should be hitting puberty, so I just made it, I guess. During this time, I noticed different physical and psychosocial changes that were also noted by Burke. Physically, I was becoming more confident in myself, and psychosocially, my parents and I began to clash, and I began to get distant and secretive towards them. I started focusing much more on my classes, with the exception of science, which I never excelled at. My favorite subjects were English and math. I never had a high school sweetheart. The longest I dated anybody in high school was for 3 months. It wasn't until my senior year where I began to try to figure out what I wanted to do with life. I was long past the fantasy stage of becoming a professional baseball player, and the realistic phase was hitting me hard. I always envisioned going straight to college, as most kids, but didn't have a way to pay for it. This led to my biggest life decision up to that point, which was joining the military, which was something I never wanted to do, but it was a way to pay for college. Throughout high school, I marched to the beat of my own drum and never followed the in crowd. I've always had an extremely high self-esteem and never needed anyone to stroke my ego. By early adulthood, at the age of 19, I left for basic training, where I was taught leadership, discipline, and a sense of putting others' needs above my own. Once I came back from basic training, rather than go to college, I started working for a local sporting good company. This helped teach me money saving skills as well as how to work with others you dislike. At age 20, I moved out of my parents' home and into my own apartment. This taught me even more about budgeting, and for the first time, I finally felt like an adult. At age 21, I began my first serious relationship. This person would later become both my wife and ex-wife, which happened in adulthood. By the age of 23, I became engaged to her. During adulthood, at the age of 26, I got married. It was a fairly traditional wedding in a church surrounded by family and friends. Shortly after the first anniversary, I was deployed to 9/11. After 9/11, I was sent to Kentucky for over a year. About 2 months into our deployment, I received news that she was pregnant, which I was excited about. Shortly after returning from my deployment, the first child was born. A second child followed this child 2 years later. The conflict between her and me began to boil over. We both had very poor communication skills. The worst part about our situation was we ended up getting divorced. However, during the process, I found out that neither child was mine via a DNA test. This was one of the low points in my life. Less than a year later, I met my current wife. She was the complete opposite of my ex. We have a great open, honest communication, which for me was very hard, but I'm working on it. When we have arguments, rather than having stuff thrown at me as I was previously accustomed to, we sit, talk, and work through our problems. After dating for 2 years, we got engaged. The next year, we got married in a traditional Catholic ceremony surrounded by family and friends. As Burke states, religion is important in U.S. family lifestyles. Thank you for listening.